As a team that mostly made criminals go to prison, we often get threats. Larry always reminds us to be careful. The four of us are still mutually protected. We all saved and owe one and another. When we heard of the accident, Steve and I were at the headquarters that befell Larry and Gary's car. When we rushed to the hospital, we see the mother of Gary and Brad, his younger brother, crying in front of his dead body. I heard Larry also suffered severe injuries and is still in the emergency room. Suddenly I realize this could be the end of his life and he is alone. Somehow, I feel sorry for him. Gary's funeral conducted in Precedence Police the next day. Me, Captain Brock, Steve, and of course, the colleagues in the police force, paid the last tribute, without the presence of Larry. He is just conscious of his lung, fainted after the surgery, still not knowing about Gary. Steve, I asked him when we are both in the car. What will we say to Larry? Steve exhaled deeply. It's clear that he is not sure. As Captain Brock said, I think. Lying to Larry that Gary survived, and he is fine. I am wavering. Do we have options? I sighed. I remembered the time we were celebrating Thanksgiving a year ago. Larry invited us to Wyoming. He had no single family except the employees at the ranch. We were sharing jobs to be done with 4 more people but found out our turkey got scorched because we had happy chatting. We still picked up the turkey and then ate it after we got rid of the burned parts to respect our hard effort. We insisted that the taste is always delicious and just found a new special recipe. Ridiculous, but I was happy. All we've gone through as a team at a time like this, I realized that, in fact, we do not separate. We're like family. We get to know each other, not only personally, but even the people closest and our family. Loss of one member of the team made us feel fragile and incomplete, a hole suddenly forming in my heart that left me feeling empty. Everything will not be the same without Gary. I understand now why the team always was Larry's come first in his life. I probably will continue my education, Steve. Outside the town, I swallowed my saliva. I know the time is not right. But I can't stand watching out my friend killed, one by one, in front of my eyes. Steve's attaching his lips. He said nothing. How about you? I asked. You will being a cop, right? Should be, Steve answered, but sounded not sure. There's a good offer in Minnesota Police Department. But Sarah and I decide to get married. She wants us to move to Connecticut, starts a new life there as a family. You know, a quiet one. Living happily in our peaceful tiny house, through our days without the risk I'm being wounded nor murdered in duty. So, Larry will be alone then, I said. He always alone from the beginning, Steve softly replied. Both of us sit in silence. I didn't like the idea that we were leaving Larry and going on of our lives separately. However, to be chosen in an elite team, which made us had received many appreciations, indeed was a pleasant time to have. But we had options. We have family and people we loved. Something that Larry's not. Where's Gary? He will meet you shortly. He cannot meet you now. Steve and I replied almost simultaneously. Unfortunately, both our answer is different. Larry looks at us alternately, then sighed. He cannot be saved, right? He asked quietly. Steve did not answer while I looked down. And for Larry, it has meant everything. Larry is obviously trying to strengthen himself. Where is he buried? I am afraid Larry will shock if he finds out Gary is already dead. And make him shocked can be dangerous on his wounds. But it seems that Larry can handle it well. I suspect he has been expecting it since in the hospital. We drove him to Gary's tomb, give him the opportunity of doing homage. He is calm, though it did not manage to hide the sorrow which is clearly visible on his face. We keep silent a while back into the car. Steve and I looked at each other, waiting. Larry sees us alternately. Can you please drive me someplace? Larry stands in front of the door, pressing the bell. Steve and I are standing behind him. The door is open. Mrs. Stewart is standing in the doorway, watching Larry with shock. Barely moving. Larry nodded. "Ma. Just that," he says. But it is enough to make Mrs. Stewart hold him while sobbing, crying. Larry closed his eyes. I know he is trying to hold back the tears. Steve and I stand by awkwardly. My eyes are teary. We all sit in the kitchen, as it used to be. But this time the situation is different. We avoid as far as possible the talks of the crash. Of course, it didn't work. The investigations are chaotic. Your information to the investigators while still in the hospital don't seem to quite a lot of help. Gary's brother, Brad, suddenly speaks up. His stare on Larry. I will try this case to be reviewed. We cannot afford to act rashly and against the law, Larry responded. I don't like Brad's attitude. It's as if Larry is the one who is guilty, and not as a witness or other victim. So, what is your plan? Brad. Mrs. Stewart warned her son. I will ask for these cases assigned to me. No way, I cut Larry off. Captain Brock will not let you get back on duty without Dr. Nelson's recommendation. Not that fast. Then we are deadlocked. Brad stared at us in turns. A few moments passed with no one to talk to. I will try to talk with the captain first. Larry loosens the tie of his suit. Looks uncomfortable, his face sweating. Are you okay? I looked at him. The day starts darker. The air is cold enough. He should not be sweating. I'm overheating. Larry opened his tie. I feel a little claustrophobic, he added with a choked voice. I watched him fidget. He could not remember many things about the incident, and that obviously bothered him. We should not talk about this, I speak up. I'm fine, Mary. Larry responded. I'm speechless. Know that the fine are different versions. We left the house shortly after that. Larry wakes up from his sleep in shock. It seems like he just had a frightful dream. I looked at him, sitting on the couch with a gasping breath. Are you all right? This is the question I've made so much today. Larry looks at me like he's seen ghosts. Why are you here? He received a glass of water that I give him and then drink it. We are home together, Larry. Steve and I stop by here before going home. I was making coffee in the kitchen and when I'm here, you were already asleep. Ooh, Larry squeezes his messy hair. It must be because the drug was. Reduce pain but made me quickly tired. Don't blame yourself, I sit down in front of him. You just had major surgery in the hospital, and the day had also been dissolved. I glanced at my watch. And besides, you're just asleep 10 minutes. The door is open. Steve appears carrying an almost full paper bag. Steve, where are you from? Larry put the glass on the table. I went out for a bit looking for a drink. Your refrigerator is almost empty. Larry looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, Steve. Steve flicked off his hand, gesturing that it is no problem. He placed the paper bag in front of us and then looked at me and Larry turns. Did I miss something? I shrugged. Don't ask me. I fell asleep for a bit, and got bad dreaming, that's it, Larry responded reluctantly. Steve nodded in understanding. About Gary? Larry nodded. I can't stop thinking about him. I swear I will catch the killer. My life will not peace before doing it. I've promised to Mrs. Stewart. We'll do this together. Steve's responded with sympathy. Larry looking back at me. I nodded. Larry smiles. Thanks, pals.